I was once given the clothes that Jamsetji Tata had worn, just a shirt and a... He says, no, your information is totally incorrect. Now, if JRD says that to you, what do? You're flustered. So I said, no, sir, my information is correct. And I'm quoting his words. He says, profit should come from productivity and not by raising prices in a favorable market.
If you could tell us of, because while Mr. Rusi Lala has written quite a bit about the Tata Group, unfortunately, there is not much written about Mr. Rusi Lala himself.
Yes.
So if you could tell us a little bit about Mr. Rusi Lala and also about what prompted him to write these stories and how he went on to write these stories on the Tata Group.
Thinking of Rusi is very nostalgic because Rusi passed away about 10 years ago, if I remember. And in many ways, Rusi was my guru in terms of my understanding of the Tata Group. I read the same books that you referred to. And already very passionate about the group, it only added fire to that passion, as it were. And meeting Rusi and being on the same floor in Bombay House, which was the second floor, we often interacted. I learned from him and a few stories of my own experiences that I could share with him. He enjoyed listening to those as well. But Rusi was the scholar who created Tata Central Archives as such. And in many ways, it was his suggestion that JRD very passionately accepted. And today, we have the Tata Central Archives in Pune. So in many ways, Rusi Lala is the founder of the Tata Central Archives. Because in doing that research, he had to refer to so much. And it was lying scattered all over the place. And he wanted to bring it back into one place. And that's how he created. And he said this archives is not only for scholars, it has to be a center of inspiration for anybody who visits the archives. So when Rusi, when I became MD of Tata Tata Services, Rusi Lala, he said, look, I've done what I could. I'm looking for someone who can manage it and run it. And that was an open season moment for me because I said, I'll do that. And while he was the soul of the archives, I was the body which sort of created the archives and took it to a level which it enjoys today, one of the most respected archives in the world, not only in India. So I learned a lot from Rusi, but one gesture of Rusi I will not forget, and that's what I'd like to mention. I don't want to mention other stories, where did we meet so often, but one particular gesture is very important for me to narrate. Other than the compliments that he gave me while forwarding the book, giving me a book, for example, the biography of J.R.D. Tata, when I took it to him, I said, will you sign it for me? He wrote something very touching for me. He says, to Don who loved J.R.D. and has endeavored to follow his values. So that's something that I treasure very much, The Romance of Tata Steel, which he wrote for the centenary of Tata Steel, he said, to Don who has made his own contribution to Tata Steel. These are certificates which are very dear to my heart, testimonials which are very dear to my heart. So one gesture I want to tell you about is that after JRD passed away, and I was regretting the fact that I had nothing which JRD had used. Something that he might have used, even a pencil which was touched by JRD, or a stapler, or I mean, I had papers signed by him, but I had nothing which was personal to JRD Tata. And I, being a devotee of men like JRD, and of course my founder Jamsetji Tata, I regretted that I could have asked for something, maybe a tie he had worn, something small. So I said to Rusi, I'm very sorry, I don't have anything. I regret that the most. He kept quiet. And then on one birthday of mine, and then I will go back a little. Rusi Lala was traveling from London to Bombay, and next day he was to meet J.R.D. Tata. And authors are, uncomfortable souls in certain way. They have to be. They are constantly thinking of what they are going to write. So they have a very suddenly in the night you will get up and write four sentences. So Rusi was one of those people. One of those people. So on the flight that he was coming into Bombay, he didn't sleep. He was scribbling, writing, whatever it was, whatever thoughts he had for whichever book, I don't know which book. So next morning, with those red eyes and tired face, when he went to J.R.D. Tata to meet him, because he had already committed to meet Mr. Tata, J.R.D. Tata said, Rusi, you don't look very fresh today. What's happened? You didn't sleep. So he said, sir, I was standing on this flight to Bombay and I didn't sleep. We are very, very active souls as such, the authors, and we trouble ourselves. So I didn't have a wink of sleep. So what were you doing? He said, I was writing, right? You mean in today's world you're still writing? Why don't you have a dictaphone and record what you want to write rather than make the effort of writing? So he said, sir, I don't have a dictaphone. I don't know how to use it. Lucy was like me, old school. So J.R.D. didn't say anything. And it so happened that it was Rusi Lala's birthday a few days or a month later. And J.R.D. Tata sent him his dictaphone as a gift to Rusi Lala. So when it was my birthday, Rusi Lala sent that gift to me so that I could have J.R.D. Tata's dictaphone. I still have it. I can show it to you that I ever possessed. I was once given the clothes that Jamsetji Tata had worn, just a shirt and those days shirts were very peculiar. Sleeves were separate, the collar was separate depending on which jacket you're going to wear. So it was a very peculiar kind of dress. It was gifted to me as a New Year gift by a colleague from Navsari because his father had been the caretaker of Jamsetji Tata. So when he came to me, he said, "Sir, this is for you, and I would like to give it to you." So that was the gift that I would have ever craved for in my life. Uh, I took it, but I said, "How do I know it's not your grandfather's dress? How do I know it is Jamsetji Tata who really wore it?" He said, "I know you were going to ask me that question. So I have brought a photograph, J.R.D. Tata wearing Jamsetji Tata wearing those clothes." Then I accepted it. But then I said it would be unfair because these people belong to the world, not me alone. So I contributed that dress to the Tata Central Archives so that any
All
visitor,
right.
yeah, so that any visitor can see it. So this is a little bit about Rusi Lala and the gift that I treasure so much, and the stories I write or
Right, sir.
refer to.
Very, very interesting. I never knew about these two positions which you have had, sir. Whenever I'm in Bombay and whenever we get to meet, I would love to see the dictaphone of Mr. J.R.D. Tata. And whenever I am there at Tata Central Archives, Bombay, at Pune, I would certainly look up the dress which
I,
Mr. J.R.D. Tata wore.
yeah, I'll make sure that you do. Maybe when we recommence later, I'll show you that on the screen.
Oh, lovely, lovely,
Sure.
lovely. Happy to see that, sir, in the next episode.
Yeah.
One person that we have worked with, again, a Tata luminary, of whom unfortunately I don't know much about. So I don't know, perhaps he was media shy or he did not give too many interviews. And
Right.
of all these luminaries that we have spoken about, I read of them during my growing up years in Kashmir.
Right. Right.
That gentleman is Mr. Sumant Moolgaokar. Now, what I have read about him or what little I know about him has been largely to do with the creation of the Tata Motors plant in Pune,
Yes.
and more so on the creation of the lake and the residential complexes and the plant itself,
Yeah.
and his passion in getting the best trucks out. And I think, for a very large portion of time, Tata Motors, or Telco as it was called, was synonymous with Mr. Mulgaonkar.
Quite right.
So you have been fortunate enough to know him, work alongside him. Happy to have your views on him, sir.
Uh, Mr. Moolgaokar was vice chairman of Tata Steel when J.R.D. Tata was chairman. And my bosses, Mr. Vaze, for example, was a principal executive officer, later became a director of Tata Steel. He made it a point that we youngsters were exposed to these great minds. So once a week, we used to meet Mr. Moolgaokar and take Tata Steel issues to discuss with him, get his reaction, get his guidance. And so that was the first time I met Mr. Moolgaokar. And he was a very handsome man with blue eyes. And at that time, at a personal level, I used to think, who is the more handsome of the two, J.R.D. Tata or Sumant Moolgaokar? He was a very, very impressive personality. Uh, and he would, very soft spoken. And the extent to which he was valued, I have shared while writing about him, that on his completing 25 years of service with Tatas, J.R.D. Tata in his letter says to him that if anything that I have done and achieved in getting you into Tatas, it would justify my salary from Tata Sons for the rest of my years. So that is the value J.R.D. Held Moolgaokar in that esteem. I mean, that is the value added to that person's contribution to Tatas and the person that he was. So, Mr. Moolgaokar, couple of things. My first meeting with J.R.D. Tata would have been a disaster had it not been for Mr. Moolgaokar. My boss was looking for somebody who dealt with coal. My boss was missing, which was the boss between the two bosses, me and the two bosses. So he caught me in the corridor. He said, "Come here. You deal with coal. You know about coal." I said, "Yes, sir." I didn't know what was coming. He said, "Come with me. I have to take you somewhere." I said, "Where are we going?" He said, "No, no, you come with me." Now, I didn't have anything in my hand. He just, almost literally pulled me to the place. And where do you think he took me? Straight into J.R.D. Tata. I was new. I was hardly 2 years old in the company, and suddenly facing J.R.D. Tata was not a easy thing to do. And Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, the Holy Trinity was there. Palkyol on one side, Moolgaokar on the other. There was no Sabha at that time, and J.R.D. in the middle, and we too in the opposite. So seated opposite. So Wazim tells J.R.D. Tata that he deals with coal. Ask him anything you want. No, I don't know what to expect from J.R.D. Tata. So J.R.D. Tata asked me, he says, "Tell me, there were two coal groups that we have, two groups of collieries in Dhanbad. One is called Sijua and one is called the Jamadava group." And he said, "Tell me, I believe your shafts are being dug in this group, in these two groups. So how many are in which place?" So I said, "Two in the Sijua group and one in the Jamadava group." He says, "No, no, your information is totally incorrect." Now, if J.R.D. says that to you, what do you do? You are flustered. So I said, "No, sir, my information is correct. Two are here and one is being done here." He says, "Young man, you don't know your facts. I'm telling you that this is not correct." I didn't know. I said, "Sir, forgive me for insisting that this is how it is being done here, and this is where it is being done." Then I rattled off the winder capacity, NMC make. I knew everything, luckily. He said, "No, no." And he wouldn't relent, and I wouldn't relent. Two parties can make a very difficult combination sometimes. So he said, but the last straw that he wanted, the last weapon that he wanted to use against me, he said, in that argument, he said, "But you don't even have a scrap of paper in your hand," because I was without anything. That's the time Mr. Moolgaokar came to my rescue. J.R.D. Tata's name was Jahangir. His friends called him J.E.H., the short. So Moolgaokar said, "J, but if the boy has everything in his head, why does he need a piece of paper?" You know, and that changed that. Then J.R.D. patiently listened to me because Moolgaokar, if he's defending me, and after that the meeting went well. I think that interaction one day saw me join J.R.D. Tata's office. I was welcomed and not somebody was planted there. So my first interaction with both in a certain way was like
Right,
this.
right.
And then Mr. Moolgaokar was very fond of photography, very
Yeah.
fond of environment. So if you come to Bombay House to meet Harish and have a cup of coffee in the Starbucks in Bombay House, all the trees that you will see around it were planted by me at that time.
All right.
Yes, because 1980, Indira Gandhi wanted,
Hmm.
tree plantation was a big thing. And
Hmm.
who else but Mr. Moolgaokar knew what the importance of trees was, because that's what he first did in a barren land in Pimpri when we started in
Right.
Sumant Moolgaokar. So he said he connected us to the horticulturist, Mr. Sharma in Pune. And for the first time, I saw that pole planting was a possibility. You don't plant saplings and wait for them to grow. You plant a 12-foot pole. And those are the trees which are today covering Bombay House. And whenever I pass that way, I think of Mr. Moolgaokar. So he was an environmentalist. And most importantly, he was a person who was very particular about customer interests. He never wanted to increase the price even in a favorable market. But there was a time when the truck commanded a premium, and it is said, never proved, that if you, in those days, there were no computers, so paper was the allotment system, everything was on paper. So it was said that there were a couple of dealers who, took a bribe of the same amount under the table in cash and gave you your truck first. They would fudge the papers. It was never proved. So shareholders went to him and he said, do you know, you could jack up the price twice the amount that you're charging today. An 80,000 rupee truck would be sold at 160,000 rupees. So Mr. Moolgaokar said, look, you cannot prove it. There were no sting operations there. We don't know of any leader like that, any dealer like that. We don't have a dealer like that. And secondly, the value for me of that truck is 80,000 rupees. I won't pay 1 rupee more. So why should I expect my other profit, to other customers to pay that money? Then they said, sir, but we'll get, if you increase the price, greater profits, higher dividends, big market cap. And these are his golden words. Moolgaokar said, in Tatas, we are interested in making a profit. We are not interested in profiteering. So he did not increase the price, and that is what taught me what to do when I looked at pricing in my products when I was MD and joint MD in cold rolled steel, and that influenced me very much. Krishnamurthy was the chief of accounts at that time in Telco. He once mentioned to me that for getting a 500 rupee price increase from Mr. Moolgaokar for a truck would take them 1.5 to 2 years just to get him to approve 500 rupees. He would say, no, work backwards. Don't penalize the customer for your inefficiency. So, sometimes it is impossible to do that, but he wanted people to look backwards. And then he says, and I'm quoting his words, he says, profit should come from productivity and not by raising prices in a favorable market. Our greatest asset is customer affection, not delight or satisfaction. He's focusing on affection because when you build a bond with a customer, it lasts much longer than delight or satisfaction, which somebody else can do better than you at times. So those are my learnings.
I think that was a different generation of business leaders altogether. And I also think that perhaps at that point of time, the business environment also was not as competitive as it is today, nor was India opened up as an economy at that point of time. And but great values, sir. And thank you so much for sharing these wonderful anecdotes with each of these leaders that you have met, worked with, and had. I think it is a standing testimony that most of these actions, most of these anecdotes are what has built the Tata Group and the Tata brand as it continues to flourish today in India.
Absolutely. I would just like to add, Girish, that the world may change around us, but there are certain basic things and basic qualities that a group like Tata's has survived with, and I think will continue to survive with, because we were the old tortoise. Once upon a time, people said this group is not moving anywhere. They are fuddy-duddy. Today, we are the largest group. It took us time, but we never wavered from what we believed in. And that is, I think, the typical strength, and that has earned for it what any business would really like to earn if it's a genuine business, which is the trust of every stakeholder. That today the Tata name creates that trust, commands that trust, and therefore share prices going up and down doesn't bother me or Tata companies. The price of our credibility should never be, below the line which it is, and that's what I like to convey to the people I interact with in the group through my culture programs. The credibility stock price has to be where it is. Cycles of share prices can fluctuate. But that price one has to hold on to.